I use a bunch of different tools for managing Sofa, the iOS app I make. But the one that's become the most core to how I do things is Notion. So in this video, I'm going to give a detailed look at how I use Notion for planning and working on new releases for Sofa. For those that are interested, I will be sharing a template that you can get at the end of this video. If you really can't wait, you can just click on the link in the description. The reason I'm using Notion for this is because of the flexibility it gives me. I can put together basically the exact interface and system that works for me and the processes that I follow. But that's enough of an overview. Let's get into Notion. Okay, so I'm going to show you my actual working space in Notion, and then after all this, I will show you the template that I put together that you can get. The first thing we have here is the product home, and this is essentially a little dashboard where I have all the information I need for kind of managing the product. So I have a couple quick actions here. So throw in the pile, track bug. I'll come back to these in a second. I have my hubs. So I have the pile, I have releases and docs for documentation. And then I have active work. And so this is essentially showing any active releases that I'm working on currently, any releases that I am planning, so I can quickly get to those things. And then I show any open bugs that I have that still need to be resolved. So let's kind of go through these things. So I'm going to start with the hubs here. And really the best way to start here is with releases. So if I go to releases, I have active and planning, not started, released, and then I have this, I like doing this admin section for all my databases because I end up building a lot of views that use different filters and sorting and stuff like that. So having this admin view is really nice because it shows all of the fields that I have, and then I can, just kind of make changes very, very easily. So in active and planning, this is essentially the view that I'm showing on the home screen, product home screen, so I can quickly jump into a release, which I'll do in a second. I have not started, so these are releases that I do have planned, but I'm not actively planning those things. It's more, future plan. I'm not started anything on that. And then I have a history of all the releases that I've done. And what's really nice about this is, this goes back to when I first released Sofa 2.0 in December of 2017. But what's really nice is I will frequently go back to previous releases to either maybe a bug pops up again that I need to look at and say, oh, how did I fix this? Where's the regression? Maybe there's a certain feature that I need to refresh myself on that I need to go back to a previous release. Maybe there's like a certain way I wrote some marketing copy that I wanted to grab, that kind of stuff. So I'm not in here all the time to see past releases, but it is a nice archive to have whenever those releases are done. And what I started doing about a year ago is I started tracking the start date for these things. So when I actually started working on something, and then when I finished a release, and I can get a sense for how long it takes to do some of these releases, and maybe ones that are much bigger, like this one here. This was a major release last year, so I started in early June and I didn't ship that until early December. So that one took a while. There's a lot in there. You can see a lot of these are pretty quick because they're minor bug fixes, that kind of thing. So if we go to active, I'm going to actually go inside of a release here. So this is a release that I am actually working on this one right now. I have a template for all of these releases that I can quickly spin up so they all have the same structure. And how this works, so I have those same properties up here, and I can set the status of those things here. Sometimes I write a little overview if there's like a certain kind of theme I'm going for certain releases, but sometimes I don't write anything, and that's fine. I have a release notes template, and I keep a similar structure for this stuff all the time for betas. And we'll look at a past release so you can see something that's a little more filled out as well. But then as you can see, we have the pile here, the main features that I am working on, and then the bugs that I will be attempting to fix in this release as well. So we'll get more into the pile in a second. And then if you scroll down here, we have this is kind of where the main action happens once I'm working on a release. This is the task board. I have a couple different views for this stuff. So if we actually go to the admin part here, I have a couple categories that I use for each thing that I'm working on. So it can be either a new feature, an enhancement, a bug. Maybe it's something related to marketing that I could be working on for a release, infrastructure work, or something related to the App Store that I need to do. These categories have been very, very helpful because what's nice is at any point in time, I have these views up here that can filter all of these things. So I can see, oh, what are the main features and enhancements that I'm working on, or what are the bugs that I need to fix, or what's the marketing work that I need to do, or what's the infrastructure work, that kind of thing. So I can quickly jump to different parts of this data and kind of filter stuff out so I can focus on different parts of it, which is nice. So this is a simple Kanban board, nothing really fancy here. And then I just keep a lot of notes in here. This is, and honestly, this is one of the reasons I really love Notion, is because you can have really nice structure and then just keep adding more information as you go down. And so the context switching is very minimal. So I'm not jumping between like 3 different tools to do things. I can have my Kanban board here, jump in here and have all of the notes that I need for this stuff. And the formatting is really great. The code blocks are probably some of the best I've seen in any notes app. And then I can link to other notes that I'm working on and that kind of thing. So the connections between this stuff is just really great. Really, it's hard to find this level of detail in other tools. So this is an active release that I'm working on right now. And this is a smaller release. So there's not too much action going on here. So let's jump over to a release that I did a little bit ago so we can get a little more detail. I released this in late March. This was a minor release. And if I go into the release notes, you can see these are the release notes that I wrote for this. You can see all the various bug fixes and stuff like that. And what's nice is I can just copy this. So this is technically a code block in Notion. You can choose whatever programming language that you're working with, but this is just plain text, so you can just do that. So I write the release notes in here, and then once that's all done and ready to go, I will just click copy here, and then I will paste this in App Store Connect when I'm going to be submitting this for review. Right, but you can see all the various notes in there. One of the other things I did for this release, because I was testing a few things, was I did a series of betas for this. I do have an open public beta that I do for Sofa that anyone can join. Depending on the release, I will put out more frequent beta updates there because I might be, like I said, testing different things. I like to track that for each release. And so what I've done is I have this little template here, very, very simple. And this is really just essentially release notes for the beta, right? So very, very simple to do. If I go into this, you can see, what those notes were. And as I go through stuff. Right, so again, nothing fancy here. The fact that I don't have to do any context switching is really, really nice here because all of this stuff is within this view. I'm working on this release. I don't have to jump around to a bunch of different tools. I can have all this stuff in one spot, which is super helpful. And when I'm writing the release notes, I will go into these beta notes and I'll grab like, oh yeah, I fixed all these bugs. So I'm going to copy this and paste it over into the actual release notes. So it ends up saving me a lot of time. Now for this, I did have a number of main features and bugs, and these are empty right now. The reason these are empty is because one of the things I will do sometimes is, let's say that I have something in here. Let's just like add something here. I'll just do like something to do, right? And let's say that this is for this release. So what I could do is I could come down to the Kanban board and I could just create a new ticket and say something to do, and then add it as this was an infrastructure thing up here. Yeah, okay. So I could do that depending on what it is. But sometimes I have, if I open this, sometimes I'll have a bunch of notes in something here. And I don't necessarily want to lose that stuff. What I'll do is I'll just kind of drag it down here and then just add it as a ticket to this thing. Again, that's one of the really, really nice things about Notion, is that the flexibility that you have here is so nice. So these are two different databases technically, but I can just drag one into the other and it maintains the same properties. And I use the same category structure between this database and the pile one. And very easy to move stuff between them. So let's say like I was working on this, I was like, I actually can't do this. Like I could move it back to the pile if I wanted to, but it's just really flexible and really nice to be able to do that. So again, we're looking at, this was a release that this is done. I already did this, but you can get a sense for, this is something I worked on for, this is like 3 weeks roughly that I worked on this. So not a huge release, but you can see I kind of moved stuff back. Everything was in the done column. I moved stuff back just to show you what a state could look like for this. But you can see like, there's a lot of stuff in here for the done column. And then you can see the various things that I was working on it at one point in time. And again, what's really nice, so, I will add notes here. So for this one specifically, I was trying to improve the book search results, or searching for books. I'll put in, if I get feedback from customers via like email or something, I'll add that in here so I don't have to go dig through my email whenever I need to see that, because this context is really helpful. And then I will add my own notes and kind of keep like a little log. So let's say I was working on this now and I was like, okay, so on March 7th, that's what I did. And I'll say like today, and then I'll add some notes for what I did. And I essentially do this little journaling for some of the larger tasks that, aren't just a couple hours to do. Sometimes they can span a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending on how complex they are. So I'll kind of keep, treat this like a little journal, which is very helpful, especially when maybe I can't work on this for a few days and I need to come back. This is a great way to jog my memory on what I was actually doing. So that's an actual release. And again, so if I go back to releases here, you can see we have the active and planning, not started, released. Like I said, I have a template here for a new release. So whenever I create a new release, I'll just do that right now. Let's say like 3.7. So what I'll do, let's say that this is a major one. I'll call this release 3.7. Open this up, let's do full. And then if I click new release, this sets me up with all the stuff I need to get started, right? So these are the things that I am always doing, or mostly doing, on every single release that we do here. Have my release notes template, I have my betas that I can do. If I have flagged any items in the pile to before this release, they would show up here as well. So we'll look at that in a second. But setting up these templates in here, it just saves so much time. And let's spend some time in the pile. So the pile, if we go into this, so the pile is intended to be this quick place that you can throw stuff into and then organize it as you come back to it at some point in the future. And those things that you want to throw in here, they can be many different things, right? So again, if we look at our categories, so it can be a new feature that I want to work on. It can be an enhancement to an existing feature that I want to work on, infrastructure stuff. So this is kind of like the invisible things that you really have to do, but they're not the sexy things that are going to sell. And then bugs as well. So I basically just have this very, very large database of this stuff. And I like to keep it all in one database. And I just have these various views for now, next, later. So really, really simple, and a very simple and kind of standard workflow for how you could work on stuff. What I can do is I'll kind of demonstrate something for you. So I have these two quick actions on the homepage. So I have throw in the pile and I have track bug. So let's say I have an idea for a feature that I want to work on. I will click this. This essentially creates a new page or a new item within the pile database. And I can say some cool new feature. And then I can give it, I'll say this is a new feature. Maybe I don't know what the effort's going to be yet, if it's large or small. You can have like parent and child elements too if you want. You can relate it to a release. I'll do that in a second. And then the status for this. So, if I'm just kind of quickly throwing something in here, I could just, the default is that it's set for later, but I can say, oh, I want to work on this next. I want to work on this now. And then what type is this? So this one's specific for me. So some features are for Super Sofa and some are for the basic plan. But let's say some cool new feature, and then like, I'll write a note about the feature. Right, and then I'm done. That's great. I've gotten that out of my brain, and I know that I can find it again later. And I can do the same thing with a bug. So let's say that someone reports a bug. Let's say track bug. I could say some bug to fix, and it automatically gives it the category of a bug. If I know the effort for it, I can do that, and it sets it to next. I can change all that stuff here. All that, right? And I can add any details about the bug. So I've done those 2 quick actions, which is really nice. So I don't have to like dive into the database to add that stuff. I can just quickly do it. And now if I go to the pile here, so now if I go to later, I scroll down, I have this grouped by the category here. So I can kind of close these down. I want to look under new feature, and there it is. So some cool new feature, and I can find that later. And I can say like, you know what, this is something I really want to work on. So I'm going to say I'm going to work on it now, right? So I'm going to change that. And then if I come over to now and I go under new feature, we will see some cool new feature here, which is really nice. And this is essentially how I triage and prioritize things that I want to work on. Things will move back and forth depending on what that is. But really the final step here for things that I'm actually going to work on right at this moment, or for the actual release, is the relation to the release itself. So you'll see some of these say a specific release in here. So release 3.4.7, that's the current release that I'm working on. And you'll see that this is related to the releases database that we already looked at. If I say, so some cool new feature, I want to work on that for the 3.4.7 release. Now if we go back to product home, I can go into releases here, or I can just see my active work and then just open this. And then if we go to, hey, what are we working on? Some cool new feature. There it is, right? So that's how all that stuff shows up. Once this is set up one time, like all this kind of templating and infrastructure, you don't really think about it. It just kind of works and connects, and you just use it. So it's really, really straightforward. So again, the pile is this quick place where I can see now, next, and later. So more commonly when something's on later, I will look to say like, hey, I want to work on this next, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my triage process. And then these are the things that I'll kind of go through. So basically once the now section gets whittled down, then I'll start looking at what's next. And then once this starts getting whittled down, I'll look at what's later. But I kind of look at all of them periodically anyway, just to resurface things, because I think something should be worked on now, it doesn't mean that's going to be true 6 months from now. And then I can see a history of all the things that are done. Again, this is very helpful to reference in the future, because sometimes future features are related to past features, and it's nice to be able to connect those dots. And the last thing I have here is docs, and this is really straightforward. It's documentation. So I keep notes on lots of things. And in previous videos, I've showed some notes on process stuff for updating the data model that I have, because that's something that I do maybe a couple times a year. And so it's not something I can just remember every step of it. And there's a bunch of steps. So it's nice to just have this nice document that I can reference. So there's stuff in here that's a mix of just like development notes for how to do certain things, or like how to renew an iOS distribution certificate, because it's, again, you don't do it very often, and it's I find it to be confusing. So I just took notes on that the first time I did it, so I don't have to remember how to do that again. And then there's various stuff for, either different classes that I've written, or APIs that I have to work with, or I have a themes database, because Sofa has over 100 themes, so I keep that very organized for how to do all that stuff. But again, this is just a simple way to put documents together. Very easy. This works really well for me. I've tried many tools before this, and for the complexity of working on an app, this just clicks for me in a way that no other tool really has. I've shown you how I use it with my actual data in here. And now I want to walk through the template that I put together that you can get if you want. So the template is called the App Developer Hub Notion template. A little bit of a mouthful. Naming stuff is hard. This should look very, very familiar to what I just walked through. I have a little bit of dummy data in here just to kind of show how this works so you can see stuff. But as you can see, the quick actions are here so you can quickly throw something on the pile. You can quickly track a bug. I even added a new quick action for if you wanted to quickly create a new release, you could do that. I have the various hubs here. So the pile, releases, docs, and then this like little dashboard area so you can see the active work or releases that are being planned, and then any open bugs here. So I will very quickly walk through this. So if we go to the pile here, so we have our now, next, later, right? Our done, our admin area, so you can kind of manage this stuff. And when you're using this, feel free to change this. Changes to whatever makes sense, add categories that you need, delete categories you don't need, whatever you need to do. This is really supposed to be a starting point. And another thing I've done is I've added 2 little starter templates here. So if you do add, let's actually go back. So if we do throw something on the pile, we'll say like test, there's these 2 starter templates. So if I hit new idea, it gives you a little bit of structure to think about what the idea is. So whether it is a new feature or an enhancement, thinking about what that thing is and just writing it down can be very helpful to make sure it's actually something that you should be working on. So you can do a little overview of this, and then there's just a few questions that you can ask yourself to make sure that you're not taking on too much work at one time, or you're thinking through the various steps that are involved in this stuff. So again, this is just to help you get started. You don't have to use all these questions, and you can tweak this template if you want. Now, if there's also a bug template, so if let's say you were making a bug, it gives a very simple, like, what is the actual issue? What are the steps to reproduce, and then any related info that can help you fix this bug. For releases, we have our active and planning section, our not started, our released, and then our admin area, which you again can update. Now, if I go into this is, again, you can delete the starter stuff here, but this is really just to get you started. But in there, we have our release notes template that you can have. We have our betas, right? You can do that as well. So if you do this, so you can say like, beta 1, and there's your new beta, right? You can put a release date for it, say it's today, right? Write your notes there, that's all good. You have your pile, your main features you're working on, the bugs that you're going to be working on, so you can toggle between those. And then you have your task board, and gives you some similar things that most developers, especially if you're an iOS developer, you're going to need to be doing most of these things whenever you're about to release something. But again, you can tweak this stuff to be whatever makes sense for you. We have our docs, and what I've done here is I just added some simple starter stuff. You really, there's really not much here. So like this is one where, your App Store page, you need to put a description in there, which is going to be an overview of your app, listing out the main features, any additional features, that kind of stuff. So this is actually a nice thing to have saved in a tool like Notion, because you may want to tweak it in the future, and having it handy instead of having to like go to App Store Connect to log in and to get that. It's nice to just have that here. Then you can add any development stuff here, and you can add as many documents here as you want. Now, what's really nice about the releases is there's that new release template for this. So whenever you create a new release, so we'll actually do that from the homepage here. So we'll do a new release. And as you can see, it's creating that template here. So we can kind of make this full screen. And what it did is it added the release notes starter template there, the beta, any pile features here, and that task board that you can use. So you can say like, this will be 2.3, right? And that little starter template alone just saves an enormous amount of time. So that was a deep dive on how I use Notion to manage Sofa, to plan Sofa, all those things. I hope you found this interesting. I know I've shown little bits and pieces of how I use Notion for this stuff, but this is really a much fuller picture of how I'm using it. And if you're interested in that template that I showed, there is a link in the description that you can get it. I am charging for it, but I think it's worth it if you're a developer who is really working on something and you are interested in this type of system and process. This can save you a lot of time in just getting up and running. That being said, if you know how to use Notion, you can definitely recreate this, and you are welcome to do that. That is completely fine. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.